Welcome to the Awakened Goddess Show, your source for inspiration, wisdom, and personal discovery. The place to learn from a diverse mix of mentors, metaphysical experts, spiritual leaders, and best-selling authors from around the world. I'm your host, Angela Wilkinson. Join me as I explore the minds of my masterful guests while they share powerful insights and easy-to-use tools you can start using right away. Now, let's tap into the energy of the Awakened Goddess and be enlightened by today's guest. Ted Winslow has over 25 years' experience in the music business and holds a BS in music and audio engineering from the University of Colorado. In addition to his musical background, Ted runs Big Country Productions, a division of Big Country Publishing located in Colorado. He works with organizations and clients from around the world where he produces commercials, writes music, produces videos, builds custom internet TV stations, and records and produces audiobooks. Now let's welcome Ted to the show. Hi, I'm Angela Wilkinson, and welcome to this episode of the Awakened Goddess Show, where we co-create powerful, conscious conversations on the leading edge. Today I have Ted joining us to talk about why you want to know about sound frequencies, the next generation of sound healing, and what is entrainment. We're also going to talk about how theta and alpha frequencies work. So welcome, Ted.
Hi, Angela. Thank you so much for having me on.
My pleasure. Sound is something that I love. I love music. I love dancing. And so I'm really excited to learn kind of like the deeper aspects of music. So that's where you come in. You know all this good, juicy stuff. So
let's go down the rabbit hole.
Yay. I love the rabbit hole. The farther down we can go, the better. How is it that you got involved with sound healing? Like, what was your catalyst? What was your passion about it?
My passion about it, and it's funny because as we all go through, we stumble across some of these things, and we have that personal light bulb moment that's like, wow, what just happened there? How can I duplicate that? And how can I keep that going throughout the rest of my life? So I started out as in the 80s playing through some numerous rock bands. And in that era of history, as well as I was studying engineering and technical engineering at the University of Colorado. And as well, I was also playing as a studio musician. So people were bringing me in. At the time, I was mostly playing bass guitar on it. And so I would come in and play bass guitar on it. We were entertaining record companies with another band outside of that. And I started to dawn on me that with the bands that I played with, we would get off the stage sometimes at midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, and I couldn't go to sleep. My body just felt completely scattered, like somebody had shot a shotgun through it, through all my auras and whatnot, and couldn't figure out what was going on at the time. And so I was also experimenting a little bit with different frequencies and tunings, and it led me to when I realized that a different tuning, and I'll explain that here in a second, but when I would tune a guitar, say to 528, it had a much different frequency ring to it than what I had grown up listening to with tuning our instruments to what's called standard pitch of 440 hertz. So as I played with these frequencies, I started feeling changes within myself. My music composition started to change significantly. My vocals started to change, and it was almost as if some things just started to get better. And it dawned on me, looking at the aspect of all the 440 tunings that all these people are doing, all the bands were in chaos or disarray or fighting or substance abuse that they were taking or quitting or leaving. And I'm like, that doesn't make sense how some of these people could create such a beautiful thing and be in dissonance and trying to preach harmony, not being in harmony with each other. So it led me to realize that tuning instruments has a profound effect to different frequencies that we tune to, which would make sense because the world that we walk around and live in every day. We go outside, we see everything in a variety of colors. So there's 7 frequency colors you think of, like in the rainbow: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. And there's 7 notes within a scale before it goes to the next octave. And I'm like, okay, so now we're laying into the frequency foundation. We've all been tuning our instruments to 440. And so when I play something in 440 as opposed to the 528, it would sound very dissonant and agitating. So then that just led me on a path to start researching, why are we recording all of our music in 440? And why aren't we going back to the days of old where we could see stuff through the Baroque era, through the classical era with Haydn, Bach, Beethoven, Mozart, where they talked about, history shows us that they were using different tunings at that time. So that led me on this path going, my gosh, this is sound healing on a whole different level. And to right now, at this point, I'm finishing up like my 14th studio album on sound healing.
That's incredible. And it seems like once you tap into this energy, it just will flow through you. And that seems like what's happened for you. I mean, to be able to create that much music and just have it flow, it's like, wow, that's so divine.
I feel so fortunate because I have a lifetime of projects that keep coming in. And I already have 2 other albums that are coming behind this one. I'm in a process that's called mixing and mastering it. And I hope to have it out within the, May, early May, mid-May. But yeah, and you think of Dr. Emoto has the book that's Hidden Messages in Water. And he kind of talks about the frequency of water, that if you use hate words at the water, it kind of turns to sludge and mud and whatnot. And yet if you praise love to it, which is a higher frequency, which, by the way, the love frequency, for those who, as we talk about this, is 528. There are other related frequencies to it, but let's just say the main frequency of love is 528. So here he's showing crystallography in the water molecules and how beautiful that just the photography that he was using to be able to show that in the book. And it kind of got me to thinking on a whole different level, that with our bodies being 75% water, that now we're training ourselves with these higher vibrations, these more wholesome frequencies that we're probably missing every day in life. Because, not to go a little bit further in it, but when we wake up in the morning, most people are either picking up the newspaper or they're turning on the news. Well, the news, if they're turning that on, is going to have all that frequency of the music and audio at about 440 hertz, the dissonant frequency I was talking about. The newspaper is going to be talking about, this happened, this is bad, this has happened, this is bad, this has happened, this is bad. And it starts to put us into like a more negative type of frequency. And so that's the thing about my music, is that it takes the brain into a whole different place through entrainment, and a whole different place that's more of a natural environment that we were used to in the days of old.
Okay, so you talk about entrainment, and so for those that haven't heard that term, or they're not exactly sure what that means, please explain that.
Entrainment is basically infusing and changing our body with that frequency of a higher vibration. So we know when we walk into a room, say it's in a social environment, and there's the one person that might be in the corner that's got the scowl on his face, and he looks agitated. And we start to kind of pick up that this guy's agitated, but yet we can't enjoy the environment on the other side where people are conversing and talking about what the latest game was that they watched, what the family has been up to. You're still kind of like, this guy isn't trained over here to a negative frequency. It brings everybody onto that same frequency so that we're at a higher vibration.
Is that also what happens when, like, I remember in therapy, as a trained therapist, they talk about mirroring. And is that the same thing when we're talking with someone and we start matching their breathing or their body and how they're moving or sitting. Is that similar? Entrainment?
That's a good question. I don't know how to answer that because I've never really thought of it in that aspect. I know like if you have a room full of clocks, and one clock pendulum is going back and forth, and there's smaller ones. Then all of a sudden they start to become back into sync.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's kind of bringing everything back around to a natural state. So
I would say yes.
I'll go with the yes.
I'm just going to declare it right now that when we mirror other people or we become more in sync, that would be a form of entrainment.
Yeah.
Because it is an energetic thing. Yeah, so we'll just go with that. And now for a quick break. I'd like to thank Healing Ways for sponsoring this week's episode of the Awakened Goddess Show. I always enjoy supporting high-integrity businesses backed by heart-centered people, and Healing Ways is one of those businesses. Healing Ways is on a mission to help alternative health practitioners and lightworkers to get noticed in a bigger way. If you'd like to learn how you can become part of a professional network dedicated to the field of alternative medicine and open yourself to attracting more of the clients you want, visit healingways.com and make sure to use promo code AWAKE to receive 2 months free membership. Now back to the show. Okay, so let's talk about these other frequencies because I know I've been on YouTube and there's lots of different frequencies, and there are ones that they say are for relaxation, one for love, and so I'm curious about each of these because I know that how many frequencies are there? Like a bazillion.
Yeah, you can. Okay, you think that if the human body can hear anywhere from 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz.
Wow.
We'll be able to feel other things on lower frequencies too that are below that. Our body will be able to pick up on it. It's just our eardrums aren't going to be able to hear that. You start out through, so like my frequencies that I use with it are like 528. 432 is another main frequency that I record in. I think I got a list here somewhere. My angelic frequencies. So I have an album that is solely based on angelic frequencies of 777, 111, St. Michael, 77 is Ariel.
Oh.
Now, I invented a company because I wanted to be able to, when I looked at where theta was going to and the alpha, I wasn't sure how people could hear that and incorporate it. So being the engineer that I am, I developed a trademark, a company called SoundSync Tech, where I'm incorporating this. And before I get into the frequencies, what SoundSync Tech was designed to do with the frequencies is it's going to take our brain into the combined theta and alpha subconscious state through frequency and brainwave entrainment.
Okay, I'm going to pause you right there. I would like you to go through, tell us kind of what happens at beta, theta, alpha, and what's the other one? Delta.
We've got delta, theta, alpha, beta, and gamma.
Okay.
So delta is going to be the deepest one, and that's basically 3 hertz or less. And that's going to be, to keep it short, it's going to be deep, dreamless sleep that we're in. The next one is going to be theta, which is 4 to 7 hertz. And that's going to be the border of consciousness and our subconscious. And it's going to be basically where we're accessing and be able to influence our subconscious mind at this point, consciously. Alpha is a conscious and relaxed state where we are tapping into our learning and our creativity aspect of it. And alpha is going to be between 8 and 13 hertz. And then 14 to 39 or 14 to 40 hertz is going to be our beta. And that's going to be our natural awake state. So when we're awake in the morning, we're getting a cup of coffee, we're getting behind the wheel and driving to work, we're in that beta state. And that's where I'm like, okay, so if we're in the beta state, when you were talking about where my epiphany was on this, how can I bring in and access my subconscious and my conscious and get it out of the negative stuff that we're seeing? And that's where I was coming in with my music, by bringing in not only the frequency, which would be, I'm going to say 528. These are arbitrary frequencies that I use. 528 or 432. I'm incorporating in through SoundSync Tech theta and alpha so that I can reach that part of the subconscious mind too.
Okay.
And the reason why is because we think that the alpha is going to be like those who go into prayer and meditation will be most associated with the alpha frequency. And then the next love frequency would be 528, and that's going to be a part of alpha as well. So beta is going to be part of the fight or flight aspect that we as human beings are in. We're either kind of in this state where we're either going to be fighting each other, or we're see that guy in the corner that might be dangerous, we're going to get out of here. And so that's where I've been playing with the sound healing. So now it can kind of come in. And I've been able to do on my website on tedwinslow.com, you can see some of the scientific studies that I've done that'll be able to show how it's dropped the anxiety status on people.
Yes, I did look at that, and it was interesting. So it sounds like the this sound healing, the different frequencies will really help soothe the reptilian brain. Yeah,
that's funny that you say that, because my latest album, there was frequencies of the fairies, and I have to look at. I have over 200 albums, so I apologize.
I love the fairies.
Queen of the
They're
Fairies.
So playful.
You would think I would know that. But Queen of the Fairies, let me give you the frequency for that too. Queen of the Fairies is going to be 785 hertz. And there's a buried tone that I call it that's in it that we kind of kid around. We say it eliminates reptiles, or it's the get rid of your mother-in-law frequency.
Oh.
So you have that time where the mother-in-law is sitting there scowling and she doesn't like your cooking, or she doesn't approve of where you're doing with your job status. Just put that on and see what happens to her. She's either going to be entrained by it and come back, or she's got to go, wow, look at the time, I got to go.
Well, and maybe we should talk about resonance, because that is kind of like, you talk about the 440 hertz that a lot of the music is tuned at versus the other. And so why is it that they have been traditionally tuned at that point?
Well, it started with a bunch of physicists in the Stuttgart conference. I'm trying to remember what that was, and it's escaping me for the moment right now. Where it becomes relevant for me is in 1939. Joseph Goebbels was at a conference and was some of the greatest ears in music at that time. Joseph Goebbels was the Third Reich minister of the Nazis. And he said that 440 was of utmost importance, that we make it a universal tuning for all the instruments. So here are the greatest ears of the world, from Vienna to London and France and Italy. And they're like, yeah, okay, we'll go ahead and go with that, which, again, it's a dissonant, hateful type of frequency. Harmonically, it doesn't really make any sense. And so he incorporates this 440. So now everybody, when they sit down, what that means is that a piano tuner comes over to your house. He's going to set up a calibration. He's going to tune each string to ring at 440 vibrations per second. When we sit down to play at an orchestra or something, we bring out our tuners to tune up our guitars. We're all tuning them to 440 hertz. So that's where that comes from. Well, we're oscillatory beings. We're in vibration as well with the entrainment. So, of course, if we have this dissonant frequency, it's going to affect all of us. So that's where that comes from.
But I'm curious, was there an ulterior motive for the reason why 440 was chosen, or was he just simply saying that everything needs to match up? What is your theory?
Oh, you're going to put me on the spot.
Oh, I'm just curious.
I think it was the militarization of music. If you think about as a weapon and being able to use sound and frequency as a weapon, there's forces that are out there. Well, okay, you You can look at what happened in Waco at the Davidian branch. And so some of these guys went out and deployed these speakers and just started blasting heavy, hard frequencies of 440. And the place got burned down to the ground. It wasn't like they were sitting there thinking, okay, let's take a classical piece by Verdi or Gershwin and, gee, look at what the tunings might have been for that time, and let's shoot that at them. But they'll deploy, I think it's called psychoacoustic warfare. So I do think that there's an agenda on it. We're programmed every day with it.
Right.
It's not like we're used to going outside every day and hearing the birds chirp, hearing the wind necessarily blowing, which would be kind of a white noise, which has every frequency in the spectrum. We're now hearing honking horns to commercials on TV that's going buy, 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 buy. We're all being programmed through what I call this flight or fight type of frequency. Where my music with going with these frequencies on the different tunings, it's all harmonically balanced. So even the theta frequency that I put inside of 528 has to be at a harmonic value that's in with that 528 so that it resonates with everything as well as the alpha frequencies. So I'm believing, and the studies are showing, that it's taking out the negative. And I got a testimonial I can tell you about. Actually,
Good.
two.
Yeah.
One of them, we all know what the sound of a drill sounds like at a dentist. It's not the most pleasing sound that we can have.
Yeah.
Well, there was a dentist that had heard one of my shows, and she was getting ready to turn it off, and something I'd said made her decide to go ahead and grab some of my music and listen to it. And she now takes her breaks in the dental chair when she's doing her lunch break and eats her lunch and likes to listen to the music. So now it's going to train at a higher frequency and dissipate the sound of the drill or probably the negative stuff that she's had with that for the day. The other one is I had I have many. I had one was a 77-year-old woman that came back from Vegas. I can tell that one later. The one that I was really thinking on is I had was working on a vocal tone, one of my vocal toning albums, and our voice has such a resonance with it. I've got vocal toning CDs that talk about the resonance in the chamber and how our body and our mass affect our sound so that we can be our own sound healing instrument as we are. So I'm excited to have this client come in, and I use biophotonic imaging through a scientist that I met in St. Petersburg. He's a doctor, teaches at the university there, and was using some of his equipment that we've been kind of using for studies to test this stuff. And she comes in and is having a bad day. And I'm like, okay, this is going to be great. So I go ahead and test her on the equipment beforehand. So I get a base reading on her before she even listens to the music or sings. She sits down and I say, okay, put some headphones on and I'm going to want you to sing to these two tracks. And she's like, well, I'm not singing. And I'm like, well, that's kind of a part of what this is. We're going to sing because it's vocal toning and hearing the vibration. She's like, I hate singing. I don't like the sound of my voice. And I'm like, oh, we're going to blow this because we kind of want to get the reading on the singing. So she's like, okay. So she gets up there and she's like, I hate work. I hate my job. I can't stand my boss. And I'm just going, this is really going from, how am I going to get a reading off of this? And so she went through two of them just singing that stuff. And just because of the frequency, she had changed to less stress, was more relaxed, was more in balance. Her energy levels picked up. Now, I'm not talking like energy level is caffeine. It's like an energy level where you wake up from a good sleep and you're like, yeah, I'm well rested. I'm ready for the day. And I've got that on my website that shows the explanation of how we did that one too.
Yeah. So the vocal toning, I haven't really done it myself a whole lot, but I'm familiar with it. So, that's something that we can all do, right? Is it just one of those things that's kind of intuitive where we just kind of start making noise or how do we do it? Yeah.
You could go through vowels and syllables. I mean, if you're singing even in the shower with the tiles and the acoustics that are there and listening to your voice bouncing back on it, that's going to still be changing your vibration. So yeah, it's a quick, easy way to be able to change our vibration. Crystal bowls was a way that I started to play with it. And I kind of call this the sound healing of old, because though we're vocal toning, we get the benefits of it. You can do it in your car. I recommend it for vocalists, those who like to sing. It's a great warm-up before you go into your scales and your intervals, before you go into a rehearsal or to a performance to sing. So it's another way that you can do it. But yes, it raises our vibration and it changes how we're going to be able to feel. It's a great sound healing that we can use on ourselves.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think one of my psychic awarenesses comes through hearing. It's like all of a sudden I'll find myself hearing a random song like in my head, and then I'll just start humming along and singing, and it's like I have to pay attention, otherwise it'll go on and on and on until I stop and notice, and it'll be like random, like Buddy Holly or Don't Worry Be Happy, or it's just like, it's just fun. It's just fun how this stuff comes in. So let's go deeper into the frequencies, and how do we use this during like meditation or for maybe creativity or manifesting?
Oh, wow. There's so many ways, and people are coming up with new ways every day. We have a publishing company, and so we've had some of our authors would run into writer's block, or they would not be able to have the creative aspect on it, and they'd start playing it in the background. And it instantly just started to change the way that they're to do. I have a computer programmer gave me feedback that now he's writing programmer, I don't know what they call it, but he's writing program on it, and he says it's opened up a whole new doors for him, because subconsciously he's able to tap into it, and he's becoming more consciously aware of what's going on around him and what his focus is that he's trying to obtain out of that. I had people have used it with their cooking. They've used it with their gardening. Meditation practice is a big one, because I've had one, she teaches Qigong, and she said that during one of their practices that over half the room had Kuan Yin appear to them. So, and they were able to see visions with what they were going through with it. So it opened them up into a whole new way. We've had one woman had called up and was laughing as she was telling us this, because she had an unwanted house guest. I'm assuming it might have been like a sister or something, who had an active child that was probably not being entertained the way that the child would. So he was bouncing off the walls and getting into everything. They were not accustomed to this child just being bouncing all over the place and needing this constant attention and playfulness. And yet the sister had fallen on hard times and was trying to stay with him until she could get stuff together. And they started playing some of my music, and I think it was less than a week, she found a brand new job. So then she had a better job, was paying higher than what her last one was paying. They found a brand new place that was close to it to go live, and the child, through that period, started becoming more relaxed and was helping out more around the house just to be a part of that household environment. So there's another way that had worked as well.
Wow, Ted, you're like a miracle worker. Just crank on some tunes.
It's the frequencies. It's the spirit working through me. They'll wake me up sometimes every morning. It's an hour before I get up, and I'll get these downloads, and I run into the studio, and it'll be a tweak here or a tweak there on a song, or it'll give me the frequencies for this new song and what's the concept that we want to be able to help people with. I do get well, and you think that, not to digress here, in 1905, so we have the law of gravity. We know that what goes up must come down. Then there's the law of lift, which is what makes airplanes fly. 1905, Einstein came up with the law of vibration. He said everything moves and is in motion. So how do we not have that motion be so chaotic Let's make it harmonious. And that's what I started seeing with all these frequencies in my music. The ego can't resist it. It gets you to stop. If you just play it in the background with where you're at, it gets you to stop with what that anxiety that you might have had from that day with the boss telling you, you didn't do this right, you haven't come into this, and then on your way home, you've got the family trauma and drama saying Johnny broke his arm and da-da-da-da-da is going through a separation. And it's like, wow, now you're picking up all of that. Your aura is getting all these holes shot into it. So I'm getting these messages in the morning, get up, write this one for a creativity. This is what the frequency is going to be used with it. And it's as soon as I sit down with that instrument and have that studio, it just starts coming out.
Beautiful. It would be so much fun to see, just to witness your process and experience of just watching this flow through you. Maybe you'll do a live Facebook Live one of these days.
One of these days.
Yeah. Okay. So now I'm curious about, how is pitch associated with the frequency? Is there a correlation? So the higher the frequency, the higher the pitch?
Yeah. It's totally going to be. So if you have 528 is going to be that certain pitch. If you double it, it becomes the octave that's going to be of that pitch. It's the same frequency, but it's just at that one whole higher pitch. Here's a good analogy. So we know Pythagoras, which was about 500 BC, or 500 BC. And so here Pythagoras, one of the greatest minds in the history of the world, and he, try to think of the places he visited, which would be Egypt, Mesopotamia, Babylon, all these great places which are different wealths of information and pockets of it. And he's big into mathematics. He's big into astronomy, but he's also considered, not many people know this, the godfather of music. And he's walking one day, imagine going to his studio, and he hears a hammer hitting an anvil, and it starts ringing out these pitches. And some are beautiful pitches to his ear, and some are dissonant pitches to his ear. And he's intrigued by these pitches. He goes back to his house, and he builds a monocard, like a modern-day guitar. It's just one string that he has on there. And he starts figuring out where the intervals are on the string as he plucks them. And what are the good ones? What are the bad ones? And to this day, there's still mathematical Pythagoras tunings that you can use and incorporate into some of the compositions. They get elaborate. You need big systems to kind of play with some of that. But
wow, fascinating. Who would have thought? Yeah. It's like, to the layperson, you look at a guitar and you're like, okay, well, they're playing it, they're strumming it, and you hear the sound, but you don't think about all of the fine tuning and the frequencies and that whole continuum. So that's really cool.
Harmonic value and overtones that are going with it. So it's all, as well as with that pitch, we'll say like 528, the key of love, there's also going to be the key of C.
I was wondering about that, where C was. Because I used to
C
play
will
piano.
Fall in that 528 and that within that 528 hertz range. And so I'll write the composition based on that key of C. Now I'll use a lot of overtones, because if I just blast you with that 528, people are going to be like, wow, what's going on? So my music uses a bunch of overtones that are on that, which are all mathematically calculated, and that's where I get the compositions that I do. So it's as an easy dose. The thought process that I had was on this is that, I can just go up and shoot this tone at you, you got this. And it's like, okay, I feel it, but I don't know I want to hear that again. My ears are still ringing. But you get this range that's going inside that key signature that's based off of that frequency, as well as the theta and the alpha.
Well, it's interesting because as you're talking, I'm thinking about some of the, on YouTube or wherever, I've heard some of these frequencies, right? And it says, this is what this is for. And to me, it does sound dissonant. And I'm like, well, is it just because I'm out of resonance with it and I need to like hurt my ears listening, or what's going on there?
You are a phenomenal healer. So you probably have your body and train it to the higher vibrations, especially if you're dealing, because you also hold this open space of love for all of us when dealing with your show and the audiences. So you're tapping into those higher vibrations so that when you're walking out of it, not everybody can do that. And when you walk out and you start hearing a radio that's got, well, and here's a good one. You got a computer that's now got a sound, what's called compressed and squashed down so that we can hear it this big. And it's in that dissonant tuning, and you're already at that higher vibration. You're immediately like, whoa, I don't want that. And so you're already back. So you're already in the high vibration.
All right. High vibration. I love it. Yeah, because
we are the frequency revolution.
That's right. That's right. Because I'm thinking of the ones that I think in particular I was thinking of, or the ones that are supposedly to work on the chakras. And I was like, okay, well, maybe I need to clean out my chakras and work up the scale. But I'm like, ooh, that just is not sounding good. So that makes sense.
See, and you could do vocal toning too, which will help to clear out the chakras. I started out, it was funny when I was going through really pursuing it. So I had an epiphany one morning. I looked over at my wife and I said, I love motorcycles. And I looked over at her and I'm getting out of the shower and I go, honey, I got to take a trip. I'm feeling a calling to go to Alaska. And, here we have 2 kids and my wife is just like, you're what? But the healer in her is like, okay, I can see where he's going with this and what he needs. Mm-hmm. And I did this trip that was up there. And that's where I started getting the downloads of like, okay, what is it about music that keeps us in this rut that sometimes we can't get out of it? And is it just in music? Is it in everything else? And what is going to be something that we can hit right away that's going to uplift our spirits, uplift our vibrations, so we're all peace and harmony and in love together. We're all creating together. And it was on that trip that a lot of it started coming together. And I'm coming back and I'm feeling it. And we're at an international trade show. And I hear a crystal bowl. Never heard a crystal bowl before in my life. And I had to go find what this was. And I went and sought out where this was. And there's a couple of guys that are kind of ringing them and everything. And I jumped in and started playing with them. Had to have them. I went and bought every one of them.
Oh, I'm sure your wife was thrilled.
And the musician, I play like every instrument. Musician's like, oh, I know what I'm going to do with these. I'm going to build all these chords. And so that's how I started incorporating it with my music. And then I realized, well, okay, like one crystal bowl, when we're doing it, is great sound healing. But it's kind of like a smoothie, okay? If I go get a carrot juice and I drink the carrot juice, I know the carrot juice is going to be good for me. But if I took this crystal bowl carrot juice to a whole nother level, and now I infused it with cilantro, cumin, turmeric, pineapple, apple, everything. Now I get all of this stuff in at one place. And it is going to be much better for me and infused into me. So it kind of started with the crystal bowls too for me on that. But it was like, oh, I want a big thing. I want it to happen quick too. I don't have 90 minutes to sit down and meditate. That's the other thing. I apologize if I'm long-winded here on this.
You're fine. I'll cut you off if I need to.
Yeah, sometimes you have to. So I'm kind of going through this, and people are going, okay, Ted, you need to meditate for about 90 minutes, and then you're going to really tap into your consciousness and your subconscious. And I'm going, I don't have 90 minutes in my schedule because there's a lot. I got to get onto the creative stuff right now. Uh-huh. And that's through the discovery I started finding with the lengths of my songs that now don't have to go into that 90-minute meditation. It's always good. I'm not telling people not to go into the 60, 90-minute meditations. And that's great. But for on the go, you can get a dose of it by listening to my music. The ego can't resist it, so it's going to open us up either way that we look at it. And that's where I started seeing, I have people that are talking about now once they listen to my music and they go into to meditation, their body isn't trained with it. They can tap right into it and go to the higher levels that they're at for their meditations because it becomes accustomed to it. It's like, oh, it thirsts for these frequencies. Once it recognizes those frequencies, and it's not the stuff that we're getting hammered on with buy aspirin, buy toothpaste, detergent, take these drugs, you'll feel better. Your body just starts to flow with and goes, Okay, this is what it's like being back into nature and being back into oneness, connecting with my higher self, touching my
Mm-hmm.
I am presence.
Mm-hmm. Gosh. Let's hope that the advertising companies do not get wind of like integrating these beautiful frequencies with their advertising. Otherwise, we're in trouble.
Change the world.
Yeah.
I'm glad you're enjoying today's episode of the Awakened Goddess Show. I want to take just a moment to thank all of the listeners and viewers who've donated to the show, because the Awakened Goddess Show is community supported. That means it's 100% donation based. So if the show has been meaningful for you, it's inspired you, or has been helpful in any way, I ask you to support the show. All donations go towards producing the show, keeping it on the air, as well as keeping the archives available free anywhere in the world. So thank you for your contribution and everything you're doing to support the Awakened Goddess Show. I appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. You can go to theawakenedgoddess.com/donate to show your support. And if you're not able to donate financially today, there are many ways you can support the show. You can share the show with your community, subscribe, and leave the show a 5-star review on iTunes. Because without your help, the show wouldn't be possible. Now let's pick up where we left off. Back to the show.
Okay, so as we're talking, I'm kind of painting this picture in my head, and I'm curious. So we have the beta and the alpha and the theta and the delta at the, like, what did you say, below 20-ish, 24? Was it below that in the frequency?
Yeah, alpha's 8 to 13 hertz, theta is 4 to 7 hertz, delta is below 4 and below.
Okay. So how does that relate to, so these other frequencies that we're talking about, the love, and those are much higher, and then in the lower hundreds, we'll just say, is where like the hate and the sadness and grief and that stuff is. So
Yeah.
how does that work? Is that like you said an octave higher is like a double of the love frequency. Is it kind of the same, or?
So it can be.
I like to get all like, my mind likes to know the
So like, okay,
details.
if you have a 100 hertz signal, 100 vibrations per second. I don't know what that is off the top of my head. I've got all these like binders with mathematical stuff.
Mm-hmm.
As I was going through it, I had to, where does it go from here and down to here and to here and all that. And so 100 hertz per second, then you can do the octave will be at 200 hertz. And then the next octave is going to be at 400 hertz. And then it's going to go to 800 hertz. So that's going to be the octaves in those ranges. Now, hate, and I'm not going to play with hate, but I'm not exactly sure what that frequency is. I'll probably associate it with 440 because I see a lot of people get agitated sometimes. You think about it at a sporting event or when someone's they're cranking out that Denver Broncos. They're cranking out their PA systems, rock and roll through all of that, and it's like, yeah, get them, you're pumped up. You see guys in the gym with the headphones on, just, I'm gonna get that next lift. Okay, so all that stuff is gonna be at 440, and that's as far as I kind of got with the studies with it, going with the other ones. So a specific frequency from hate, and I get it that people are like, well, I think it's this frequency or that one. I can't answer it the way that I think that
Well, let me reframe my question. Where the hertz lie in terms of where these states, brainwave states are, the theta and the alpha, are really small compared to these other frequencies. So I'm just looking for the correlation, how these small frequencies relate to, and then there's in between, we know the lower vibrational, ickier, negative feeling states. Do you understand what I'm curious about?
Yeah, and I think that you can go to I think the people are going down to that when they have some of the dissonant frequencies that I was just talking about on the 440.
Okay.
Probably I
think I went too far down that rabbit hole. That's okay.
I'm sorry.
That's all right. Some questions just don't, it's like we don't have to know how for everything, the whys and the hows for everything. Okay, so let me ask you this. One of the things I do with my clients is create what I call envision movies. And it's where I get them into a heightened state where they're already, where they're embodying their future self, already living in their ideal reality, right? And so I am getting them more excited. And, you talk about once you tap into something, that it's easier to get there, whether in meditation or this higher level of excitement. I'm curious because I've thought about kind of like laying a track with this visualization, this movie that they watch, to help them help make it even a more powerful experience. I'm curious in terms of manifesting what you would recommend.
Oh yeah, I mean, that's the whole beauty that I like with these higher frequencies in the music that I'm playing with, because I've manifested my career. I'm playing as a musician and doing what I love. Every day I get to walk into a studio and pick up whatever guitar that I want. And I truly believe it's because I'm living in those frequencies. Mm-hmm. And I'm at a higher vibration. I'm not absorbing the negative stuff from outside. So you're already working with the clients, tapping into their subconsciousness, and you're giving them creative visualization and helping them out with that. Well, if you've got music that's going with that, that's of a higher frequency and a higher vibration, it's not so much the words that you're giving them so that they're following along in their minds with what you're saying to envision it. Their body is now being entrained by those frequencies and drinking up those frequencies. Mm-hmm. So it's getting out of the rut of those old frequencies of the bye, or this happened today, this shooting here or explosion there, or whatever bad press is coming out. Mm-hmm. So
well,
I think it's huge.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, because when they're watching, they see themselves talking to themselves, right? Their future self. And I find that after this experience, sometimes resistance comes up, because when you're stretching outside of your comfort zone and you're stepping into this future reality, then there's the ego that kind of shows up and says, well, wait a second, that's not true. And so there is a dissonance. So it seems like something like your work adding to that would amplify the power of it.
The brain, the ego cannot resist the frequencies of this music. So now you don't have any judgment on it. Now there's going to come across those people that, are going to be the naysayers, and they always will be on that. Mm-hmm. But in like I said, it's going to be the mother-in-law repellent. And, there's a reason for where the higher vibrations are that we want to go to take that. And that's the one thing that I love about these frequencies, is that it constantly brings, I want a new piece of equipment and I'll get it. I'll want a new opportunity with my career and I'll be able to pick that up. In fact, mm-hmm. I don't want to get too lost on this, because as the listeners are probably listening, okay, where the music, I get this, you're talking about the music. So what I want to do is I want to give your listeners the opportunity where they can get a free, it's actually my best-selling album on Amazon, mm-hmm. which is called Angelic Sound Healing. So let me tell you how they can get that. So now they can go grab this and experience this for themselves. And it's free. I just do have to say, my albums are on iTunes and Amazon. This process that I tell you won't work with them. It's a whole different type of deal. But go to my website at tedwinslow.com and go into the store. And once you go into the store, you'll select Angelic Sound Healing. And then you'll go to checkout. In the checkout, there's going to be a coupon code. And type in the coupon code RADIO, R-A-D-I-O. And it will zero out your balance. Make sure that the balance is zeroed out. That way we don't, otherwise you're going to have to enter a credit card information. And if that's the case, just go back and do it over. So that it's a zero balance, and then you can check it out. You'll have to answer some questions in it, because it's going to want to make sure that it's a legitimate person that's on there. So we're not getting hit by these auto computer, whatever.
The robots.
Yeah, exactly. See, I didn't even want to say the name.
No.
The robots, so they can check it out. The other part, we can't do that with iTunes and Amazon because they're different aggregators. So you can get it off of my website.
Mm-hmm. Well, and what
And
I'll do is in the Awakened Goddess community, you guys can. I'll make sure to put a link and some instructions and make it super simple. So
Perfect.
take all the work out of it for you guys. So just make sure to go to the Awakened Goddess community, and we'll take care of you.
The only other thing that I ask on that is that those who download it, please put a review up on Amazon or iTunes if you have that account, because that helps to give me recognition for what we're doing with all uniting each other for a higher frequency with a frequency revolution, so that we can, I call it frequency revolution, but so we can all be at a higher vibration, and that we all understand that this is here to help us so that we can reduce our anxiety, get out of the fight or flight, and just enjoy life through the natural process.
Yes. Well, I think it is really important that we're as a spiritual community that we are supporting each other, and that when we find something that works for us, that we do share it, because if we're looking at traditional media, we're not receiving this kind of really powerful information. And, that's why it's one of my goals to really take the show to a larger audience and get it to mainstream media. Because this information is so important. And if we're all working together as a spiritual community, we are raising the consciousness on the planet. And then we will have more peace and more inner peace, outer peace, and it'll just be that much more fun and abundant.
Much abundance and love and joy. Love and light.
Yeah. Okay, so we haven't touched on, at least we haven't talked about the word, the solfege. How do you pronounce it?
Solfeggio.
It's the mouthful. Solfeggio. What is solfeggio sound healing?
So solfeggio is kind of like where, I'll call it where we started out, probably with our early sound healing with vocal toning. And that comes from the word solfege, which is an Italian word. And it was ut, re, mi, oh my God, I can't believe it. Ut, re, mi, do, ut, re, mi, something, fa.
So Latino.
Exactly. Because then they expanded it. It was a 6-note, 5-note scale at the time, 6-note, and then it expanded out from there. But I found it was interesting to think that mi was at 528 hertz, the love frequency, mi, mi, which off my first album, which is Solfeggio of Earthly Frequencies, is 528, and is short for miracles. So that frequency, mi, mi, short for miracles, and that's where I put it, because that's a miracle frequency. When I'm sitting down teaching somebody just how to play a guitar or play a chord or something, I'm always tuning to, that's the first one that I'm tuning to. And I like all the frequencies, but that one, I guess it has a lot of special meaning for me because it's like launched so much other stuff for me from there.
So that sounds like a really good frequency to start with if you're wanting to kind of feel what this stuff is all about.
Yes. And I believe John Lennon was recording Imagine in 528. I think U2, Bono did one song for his mother in the key of 528. But, they don't do it anymore. They're not telling us. So.
Well, I thought somewhere there was a converter, like for songs, that you could plug in a song and it would retune the frequency. Have you heard of that?
I'd seen that, and I tried playing with it, and I don't know what happened. Something didn't really necessarily work.
It seems like that would be difficult to do. I mean, just from Yeah,
and I know with here in the studio that everything that I'm putting out, because I'm hearing there's a lot of claims with how they're using theta and alpha, but coming from an engineering standpoint and scientific, and I know what I'm doing with it, because there's a lot that goes into calibrating the instruments. So I'm really not sure what their process are. And that's why I kind of stick with mine, because I'm knowing what I'm able to put out.
Yes.
Met Dr. He's the doctor out of St. Petersburg working out of this invention that he did called biophotonic imaging. And it studies the photons. It measures our human energy field. And so I've got these systems that's how I was able to measure scientifically with it, because there's one thing is I know what I'm engineering here and putting out. And I know that we're here in a setting, we're hearing it, we're feeling it. But what is the scientific study that we could see past what we hear with it? And so with his devices, and I got like about $12,000 of equipment with it, then I'm able to now hook somebody up beforehand, test them, put them through it, and then test them again to show them how it's affecting them. So now they can see scientifically in joules, the energy is measured through joules with that one. And it measures the human energy field.
So you can then see if the aura gets larger or if it's smaller, or how the chakras appear. I know, I love looking at those images that you have on your website.
Yes. I started with this. Here's a great one. A 77-year-old woman gets off the plane coming from Las Vegas. And I'm like, you have to let me try this on you. And so she comes back from Las Vegas, pick her up in the car, and I hook her up, and her chakras were just tiny, itty bitty, all over the place. She's discombobulated. And I put on Angelic Sound Healing, the free album, and she listens to it, and all of a sudden the chakras start to open up. And I had her listen to it when she went to sleep at night, which is, you think about it, it's a great way after a day. We can't always get these healthy doses everywhere we go. It'd be nice. I'm probably one of the few people that can, but we can't get them. So at the end of the day, great time to throw one of my CDs on or MP3 players. And so she went to bed listening to it, got up the next morning, and we tested her again. And they just started becoming more enlightened on her, and they all started opening up for her. She started getting her voice back, and her energy came back the next day. She felt vibrant.
Well, I imagine that it seems like that clarity and that, because you talked about, the coffee energy that you get. Well, that's very different from the frequency, the energy, because you're actually infusing yourself with more energy through the frequencies versus like caffeine.
And you won't have the crash.
Well, yeah, it's interesting because caffeine actually usually puts me to sleep. I'm one of those odd. I'm an odd person that it affects them the opposite. I think it's the red hair kind of thing. Yeah. So any last words as we wrap up? Anything that you feel called to share that we didn't have a chance to talk about? I know we went like all over the place.
I just want to say that, if you hear it, please write a good review. It's allowed me to this career has allowed me to be able to share this, and it's funny because it's a Amazon bestseller, and so able to give it away so people can listen to it, and it'll open up doors. All of a sudden, they'll want to get healing with the frequency of the fairies or planetary solfeggio sound healing. I'm working on my 14th studio album, and there's more that's coming in every day. So just put a good review. Love feedback from anybody. They can reach me on Facebook. I've got a Facebook page, Solfeggio Sound Healing. I'm on Twitter, which is at Ted Winslow. And go to my website. You can see all these scientific studies. I've even measured the vortex in Sedona, Arizona, and was working on my music to create that same energy that we had in there. TedWinslow.com. And I just have to say thank you so much for all you do on opening up this community and holding the space for us, and the love and the light, and helping us all be able to connect.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. This is like my path, my purpose, and I love that I get to do this and meet wonderful people like you. So thank you. Thank you for joining me today. It was awesome.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Awakened Goddess Show. I hope you enjoyed today's guest and got something you can start using in your life right away. For more spiritual insights and to listen to more episodes, subscribe to The Awakened Goddess Show at theawakenedgoddess.com and discover wisdom that'll change your life.